is mine, oh my. Snap, snap. What you know about these racks? Step back. If you don't know now, you know that I'm a dollar baby. If you ain't talking commas, don't holler at me. I'm on sugar mama, mama, she's self-made.
Called Kikiyama in 2004. Unlike many games, there was no dialogue, combat, plot, or way to reach a game over. All the player did was control a female character called Matasuki, starting from her apartment, and an apartment you can't leave. But when you make Matasuki sleep in her bed, she wakes up in a dream world. She appears to still be in the same room, except she can leave the apartment this time. The room opens to a to collect, and they're activated by pressing 1 or 3 on the number pad. When Matasuki collects all 24 effects, the game ends with a clip of Matasuki jumping off the balcony. The game gathered a significant following worldwide. Some likened playing it to being in an LSD simulator. Others loved the feeling of being lost the game gave them. Over the next 3 years, the game's designer Kikiyama made many updates. On October 1st, 2007, Kikiyama released version 0.10 and disappeared. No one could contact them. This only added another layer of intrigue to the game. Had Kikiyama followed the same path the game's character Matasuki took? One popular theory was that Kikiyama had died in the 2011 Tohoku earthquake that claimed thousands of lives. For 7 years, the question of what had become of Kikiyama was on the lips of many. Then, in 2018, the mystery of what happened to Kikiyama was solved. Well, sort of. Game publishers Playism published the game on a game site to promote a reboot of the game that was on the way. They confirmed that Kikiyama was quite alive and well, and they were also involved in the project. Fans had no choice but to take their word for it. Finally, in 2023, almost 20 years since the game's release, Kikiyama gave their first interview. But fans were going to be disappointed because Kikiyama was only required to give yes or no answers. This only amplified the mystery around him. Yume Nikki went on to inspire many of the current walking simulator games. Pamperchew. This is Pamperchew. He looks like any young man on the outside, but Pamperchew is anything but. He had a website and a YouTube channel where he shared his interests, the furry fandom, his furry art, and videos of himself doing anything furry related, including creating his fursuit, a blue wolf named Sandy Wolf, and wearing said fursuit to conventions. Pamperchew was also obsessed with Pokemon, and when he wasn't in his fursuit, he wore clothes with the cartoon figure. But what made Pamperchew popular was that he wore diapers. Not because he had any medical condition, but because he had a fetish. Naturally, some would assume that Pamperchew was buying his diapers. And he did, but not always. Pamperchew would go into other people's trash looking for soiled baby diapers. Pamperchew tinkered with technology and allegedly developed a capacitor using the soiled diapers. But he didn't stop there. Pamperchew would microwave the used diapers to make them nice and squishy before he slipped them on. When viewers pointed out that it was a fire hazard and he could also fall sick, Pamperchu called them idiots and insisted it was safe and that he had never been sick. This might explain why he ate a lot of expired food. Pamperchu believed that anything canned or bottled had no expiry date. He would take videos of himself eating food that went bad decades ago, calling them vintage. So no one was too surprised when Pamperchu put up a video saying he had been diagnosed with an AIDS-induced cancer called Hodgkin's lymphoma. Surprisingly, Pamperchu has many fans among people with baby furs and adult baby kinks. He also has a website selling diapers from $6 to $60. Apart from that, Pamperchu has his very own daddy, an older Asian man, who appeared in some of Pamperchu's videos. Several viewers were convinced that Pamperchu was suffering from a mental disorder, but he always said he wasn't. There were rumors that he died from cancer, but there is no proof that that's the case. Even though Pamperchu's channel was removed from YouTube, he's remained heavily criticized even among adult babies and diaper lovers, who felt he was giving them a bad rap. Despair Code. The Despair Code first appeared in Level 5 of the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg posted on 4chan's X. It is a potent psychological manipulation tool created by secret organizations and encrypted in their archives. This code is believed to induce hopelessness and despair in anyone who comes into contact with it or even tries to decipher it. It is built on the concept that the brain has been proven to be susceptible to subliminal messages and suggestions. The idea that someone can weaponize such a tool wasn't far off. The Despair Code can convince its victim that everything they imagine and experience is real. The littlest things like hearing voices to suspecting someone is tailing them, making them paranoid and psychotic. The Despair Code can also work like a mind control device. Once a victim hears a particular sound, they are compelled to fall into despair or make deadly choices. So, where is this deadly code? Rumor has it that it was well hidden in the elusive dark web, and some have claimed to have found the Despair Code in cryptic texts and images. However, some believe it is leaked as hidden messages in songs and movies to influence people's mental states and make them feel despair and long for death. Yet there are still arguments about whether the Despair Code is real, a psychological argument, or just another cryptic meme someone made. Level 5. 8chan or 8. By 2013, the notorious image board 4chan was experiencing increased moderation and restrictions on its controversial content. Several discussions were going on about online censorship and moderation, and those who frowned against what they called loss of free speech on the internet were looking for a new platform with fewer rules governing what could be posted. In came Frederick Brennan, who went on to create 8chan. It was an anonymous site promoted as a free speech site where users could express themselves freely without any constraints imposed on users of 4chan and other forums. Users could also anonymously create boards on any topic they wanted. 8chan had followed 4chan's steps and became an online community known for explicit, illegal, right-wing extremism, online harassment, and conversations around mass violence. It became plagued by even more controversy in 2019 when mass looters began posting their manifestos on the site before pulling the trigger. In many cases, 8chan users would praise and spur them on when they saw their posts. As far as they were concerned, everyone was free to express themselves on the site. Even Brennan, who had created 8chan, didn't want 8chan running anymore. He has since turned the site over to U.S. Army veteran Jim Watkins. Pressure was on Cloudflare, the American firm that hosted the site, to do so. First, they defended 8chan's free speech stance, but they invariably caved when 8chan became inaccessible through its regular domain. 7 months later, 8chan announced a rebrand and a name change to salvage the site's reputation. When it became clear the name change did little to influence 8chan users. In 2021, Jim Watkins was summoned before Congress to testify because the site was one of the primary platforms used by far-right rioters and followers of QAnon to plan the January 6, 2021 storming of the U.S. state's Capitol. Despite that, a gun is still popular. Dream markets. Dream Market was an online market that was founded in 2013, but unlike good old eBay and Amazon, Dream Market operated in the dark. As you It happens. If you're in a survival situation, look for trash. You'll find help. If you're wearing clothes, and could only be accessed using the Tor network. Buyers could shop anonymously for just about anything. Cryptocurrency, counterfeit consumer goods, even drugs. It was one of many darknet markets operating online alongside Alphabet and Hansa. But in 2017, several law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, DEA, and Europol, teamed up to form Operation Bayonet and bring them down. Some administrators for Alphabet, Hansa, and Dream Market were all found and arrested. The sites were also shut down that same year, all except one, Dream Market. There were whispers around that law enforcement officials were impersonating the site's administrators, but that didn't stop vendors and buyers from Alphabet and Hansa registering on Dream Market after Operation Bayonet. Dream Market quickly became the most active marketplace on the darknet. 2 years later, on March 24, 2019, users of the site woke up to a notification on the Dream Market site announcing to users that it would shut down in a month and move to a new server followed by an onion link. This was the first time anything like this had happened on a dark market site. They usually shut down unannounced, giving users enough time to withdraw their coins. This only added to the rumors that the site had been compromised by law enforcement to gather intel on users, especially since that was what they had done with the Hansa marketplace. After Alphabet was shut down, users had moved over to Hansa in huge numbers, and law enforcement had let it happen. They gathered evidence from 27,000 transactions made in 2 weeks before shutting down Hansa. This would lead to around 10,000 arrests. But some believe that all this time, Dream Market was being run by a shadow admin that law enforcement never caught. The site had been taken down many times. It's easy to believe this elusive figure was tired of playing cat and mouse with the police and decided to bow out before it was too late. But the truth behind how Dream Market shut down remains one of the secrets of the dark web. Subculture.com. For 20 years, the mysterious website Subculture.com either puzzled visitors or gave them nightmares. It was a dated, cryptic website filled with bizarre, creepy images or GIFs, many of them based on explicit material like terror, gore, torture, and wars. Kind of images that were popular with underground subcultures that had harmful interests. Visitors to the site also had to deal with numerous random pop-ups and images glitching across their screens, almost like your system was on its last leg. Sometimes they got to be so much the only way to close the site was with the task manager. For a long time, no one knew who had created the site or why. There wasn't even a record of the domain name being bought. The popular belief was that the site was created to infect computers with viruses, but others were convinced the site was created to normalize dangerous behaviors within niche communities. It wasn't until 2017 that the YouTube channel Scare Theater revealed that they had found the site's creator, Antonio Mendoza, and cracked the case. Antonio's reason for making the site wasn't what anyone had thought. It was just artwork. In the early internet years between the 90s and early 2000s, internet art, aka net art, became popular with artists using the internet to make art. That's when sites like Subculture.com and CleanPo.com all came to be. Of course, many of them have since been archived or are now offline. As for the glitchy effects on Subculture.com, Mendoza had added them to make visitors to the site feel destabilized. Chinese influencer farms. Viewers buying a product because someone is marketing it on a screen is not new. The see now, buy now concept appealed to viewers and made shows like the Home Shopping Network so popular in the 1980s and 90s. In 2017, this concept re-emerged in live streams in China. Influencers became the faces, selling fashion and cosmetic products to millions of online shoppers in real time, generating billions of dollars in revenue. The concept has since become popular in other Asian countries. They aren't influencers who rely on creating relationships with their followers to make sales. Instead, they appear on live shopping platforms, show and use products, and the orders roll in. Farming companies for influencers became popular to drive even more. Companies train wannabe influencers to talk and make videos in flattering lighting. Sometimes the companies collaborate with them and set up mini studios equipped with tripods, ring lights, and a webcam to do live streams. Giant corporations like Taobao, China's equivalent of Amazon, and Alibaba fund these operations. While it sounds great on paper, the reality is different. The influencers are trained in harsh conditions to stream for long hours with no breaks. They also have strict contracts and sales quotas while earning minimum wage. Even popular influencers earning good money have no life outside of their streams and act like living puppets of the farming companies. These influencer farms used to be only popular in China, but they have now spread across Asia. A couple were also uncovered in the UK, leading many to believe that Western companies are now replicating influencer farms to drive sales. Level 6. Benadryl. In many circles, Benadryl, also known as diphenhydramine, is an over-the-counter medication to treat allergies and motion sickness, even for those having trouble sleeping. But in 2020, when word of the Benadryl challenge started to spread across TikTok, it had nothing to do with stopping aches and pains. The challenge was for participants to make videos of themselves downing large doses of Benadryl and the aftermath. High doses of Benadryl are known to cause disturbing side effects like delirium, hallucinations, and psychosis. It could also be fatal. Numerous authorities, including the FDA, put out warnings about the risks involved. That didn't stop teenagers and youths from hopping on the trend and sharing their experiences on TikTok, Reddit, and 4chan. They reported hearing voices and becoming overwhelmingly paranoid for the most troubling sighting of a sinister character called the Black Hat Man, a tall, shadowy figure in a brimmed hat. Some claimed he spoke to them. Others recalled just experiencing a feeling of dread. Health practitioners were convinced it was a sign that a high level of Benadryl had been taken, but some believe that he is real.
It's fucking pouring. You hear that? It's raining hard as fuck.
Since 2001, a site called the Hat Man Project has been collecting and sharing stories of people who have seen the Hat Man. Stories of the Hat Man have painted him as something between an urban legend and a sleep paralysis demon. Not all the people who saw him were left with happy stories to tell. Lucky ones ended up in the hospital getting their stomachs hurt. The unlucky ones were about 6 feet up. TikTok has tried to stop the Benadryl challenge by blocking the search term and disabling popular hashtags based on it. But viewers and participants began to wrongly spell hashtags like Benachallenge or Benary challenge, bypassing Mesa Mop. 2016, an IT expert called Chris Montiero was browsing dark web message boards when he found himself on a professional-looking site called Mesa Mafia. It was a site that provided hitman services for price. All they needed to do was send their targets' names, photographs, and addresses. Users could also add any extra details necessary for the hitman to know. They could also pick how they wanted it to happen. Burglary gone wrong, kidnapping, even more. Montiero was convinced that Mesa Mafia was phony and wrote an article about it in his blog. Not long after, Montiero got a message from someone called Yura, who tried to get Montiero to take the post down, first offering to pay him, then sending him threats. Montiero refused. Mesa Mafia. In 2016, an IT expert called Chris Montiero was browsing dark web message boards when he found himself on a professional-looking site called Mesa Mafia. It was a site that provided hitman services for price. All they needed to do was send their targets' names, photographs, and addresses. Users could also add any extra details necessary for the hitman to know. They could also pick how they wanted it to happen. Burglary gone wrong, kidnapping, even more. Montiero was convinced that Besa Mafia was phony and wrote an article about it on his blog. Not long after, Montiero got a message from someone called Euro, who tried to get Montiero to take the post down, first offering to pay him, then sending him threats. When Montiero refused, Euro put out a video. Not only did Montiero refuse, but he was able to get into the back end of the site and found what Euro was trying to hide. A long list of names, photos, addresses, and proof that people had paid to have them killed. It was a race against the clock to warn every one of them. Some they got to in time, but for a few, it was too late. Amy Allwine's name was one of those on the kill list. She was already dead when police tracked her down. Her husband, Stephen, a respected elder in the church, had called in her death as a suicide. Turns out, Stephen had paid $12,000 in Bitcoin to Besa Mafia for his wife to be taken out. The hitman didn't show up. He did it himself. Pretty soon, the FBI was tracking other people who had put out hits like American Christy Lynn Felkins. She parted with 12 Bitcoins to have her ex-husband taken out. The only reason her ex-husband wasn't dead as a doornail was because Besa Mafia was actually an elaborate scam. He had paid to have them killed. It was a race against the clock to warn every one of them. Some they got names and addresses. Users could also add any extra details necessary for the hitman to know. They could also pick how they wanted it to happen. Burglary gone wrong, kidnapping, even. Montiero was convinced that Besa Mafia was phony and wrote an article about it on his blog. Not long after, Montiero got a message from someone called Euro, who tried to get Montiero to take the post down, first offering to pay him, then sending him threats. When Montiero refused, Euro put out a video. Not only did Montiero refuse, but he was able to get into the back end of the site and found what Euro was trying to hide. A long list of names, photos, addresses, and proof that people had paid to have them killed. It was a race against the clock to warn every one of them. Some they got to in time, but for a few, it was too late. Amy Allwine's name was one of those on the kill list. She was already dead when police tracked her down. Her husband, Stephen, a respected elder in the church, had called in her death as a suicide. Turns out, Stephen had paid $12,000 in Bitcoin to Besa Mafia for his wife to be taken out. When the hitman didn't show up, he did it himself. Pretty soon, the FBI was tracking other people who had put out hits like American Christy Lynn Felkins. She parted. Amy Allwine's name was one of those on the kill list. She was already dead when police tracked her down. Her husband, Stephen, a respected elder in the church, had called in her death as a suicide. Turns out, Stephen had paid $12,000 in Bitcoin to Besa Mafia for his wife to be taken out. When the hitman didn't show up, he did it himself. Pretty soon, the FBI was tracking other people who had put out hits like American Christy Lynn Felkins. She parted with 12 Bitcoins to have her ex-husband taken out. She was already dead when police tracked her down. Her husband, Stephen, a respected elder in the church, had called in her death as a suicide. Turns out, Stephen had paid $12,000 in Bitcoin to Besa Mafia for his wife to be taken out. The hitman didn't show up. He did it himself. Pretty soon, the FBI was tracking other people who had put out hits like American Christy Lynn Felkins. She parted with 12 Bitcoins to have her ex-husband taken, dollars in Bitcoin to Besa Mafia for his wife to be taken out. When the hitman didn't show up, he did it himself. Pretty soon, the FBI was tracking other people who had put out hits like American Christy Lynn Felkins. She parted with 12 Bitcoins to have her ex-husband taken out. The only reason her ex-husband wasn't dead as a doornail was because Besa Mafia was actually an elaborate scam set up by Euro. He lured people in to pay for hits that never happened. They also couldn't report to the police without incriminating themselves. In the end, Euro made millions of dollars and disappeared. This site was a cruel reminder of the evil intent that can be lurking behind Gamergate. In 2013, video game developer Zoe Flynn released the game Fortnite. It was a great game went public, Quinn's former boyfriend, Aaron Gajomi, made a rambling blog entry calling out the application. He also accused her of having relations with a journalist to get coverage of her. Also included copies of chat logs, text messages, and emails. The post was shared to 4chan, Reddit, 8chan, and Twitter. Quinn became the subject of targeted harassment, Corner's conspiracy. She received violent threats and death threats for allegedly using her feminine wiles to get ahead. Adam Baldwin coined the movement Gamergate, describing it as a protest against journalists covering the game industry. Yet even when it got out that Aaron had lied, and the journalist he claimed Quinn had seduced for positive reviews had not done any review of Quinn's game, the harassment didn't stop. If that wasn't bad enough, any woman who called out Gamergate would face this decentralized, faceless, anonymous Anita Sarkeesian, a feminist media critic and video game developer. Brianna Wu. They were threatened with physical harm. Their social pages were hacked and they were doxxed and swatted, forcing them to leave their homes. Someone even created a game where players could click a mouse to punch Anita's face. She also had to cancel a speech at an event because violent threats were made to the campus it was holding. One Twitter account targeting Wu was named Death to Anita Sarkeesian, a feminist media critic and video conspiracy. When the game went public, he lured people in to pay for hits that would never happen. They also couldn't report to the police without incriminating themselves. In the end, Yura made millions of dollars and disappeared. The site was a cruel reminder of the evil intent that could be lurking behind smiling faces. Gamergate. In 2013, video game developer Zoe Quinn released the game Depression Quest, which was praised by mental health professionals and game critics. But not everyone was happy. A year later, when the game went public, Quinn's former boyfriend, Aaron Gajomi, made a rambling blog entry calling out Zoe's behavior during their relationship. He also accused her of having sexual relations with a journalist to get positive coverage of her game. Aaron also included copies of chat logs, text messages, and emails. The post was shared to 4chan, Reddit, 8chan, and Twitter. Quinn became the subject of coined Quinspiracy. She received violent threats and death threats for allegedly using her feminine wiles to get ahead. Baldwin coined the movement Gamergate, describing it as a protest against journalists covering the game industry. Yet even when it got out that Aaron had lied and the journalist he claimed Quinn had seduced for positive reviews had not done any review of Quinn's game, the harassment didn't stop. If that wasn't bad enough, any woman who called out Gamergate would face this decentralized, faceless, anonymous online mob. Anita Sarkeesian, a feminist media critic and video game developer. Brianna Wu. They were threatened with physical harm. Their social pages were hacked and they were doxxed and swatted, forcing them to leave their homes. Someone even created a game where players could click a mouse to punch Anita's face. She also had to cancel a speech at an event because violent threats were made to the campus it was holding. One Twitter account targeting Wu was named Death to Brianna. She and her husband now live under different identities. Today, many believe that Gamergate has since died down and women are more accepted in the gaming industry. Others argue that Gamergate was less about the game, more about being abusive towards women. Gore on YouTube. Typically, explicit content, gore, crime, and violence are automatically censored on YouTube thanks to artificial intelligence. But occasionally this content bypasses detection and appears on the site. One of the most prevalent moments this happened was in 2017, when a wave of controversial videos appeared on YouTube Kids starring popular characters from children's shows, such as Elsa from Disney's Frozen, Spider-Man, Peppa Pig, and Mickey Mouse to attract young viewers. The videos would show these characters doing inappropriate, creepy, violent behaviors and even explicit acts like the use of alcohol, gore, shots, pregnancy, and even giving birth. Not exactly things that anyone would call child appropriate. Yet these videos would rack up millions of views, which was alarming because children were the prime targets. YouTube cracks down on the plague of inappropriate children's content. Hundreds of accounts were terminated and over 150,000 videos were removed. They now base characters on less popular cartoons like the Australian cartoon Bluey and animations of video games like Minecraft and Among Us. There's no telling if YouTube will ever completely wipe them out. Level 7. Slave Master Case. In the early 2000s, chain letters began circulating in many online communities and chat rooms warning women about a sinister character who used the screen name Slave Master. The letters revealed that he was an online predator who was using the internet to target and traffic women. It also provided descriptions of Slave Master and tips to stay safe online. All the letters ended the same way, encouraging users to keep passing the letter along with more numbers. He thought that the letters were an internet hoax and Slave Master was just another internet legend. What they didn't know was that Slave Master was real. He was a man called John Edward Robinson. The first 3 decades of his life were spent in and out of jail as he racked up charges of theft, fraud, and embezzlement. Robinson didn't stay in white-collar crimes for long. His first victim was 19-year-old Paula Colleen Godfrey, who he hired to work as a sales representative in 1984. After she went missing, her parents received typewritten letters from her. In the letters, Paula wrote how grateful she was for Robinson and mentioned that she didn't want to see her family anymore, followed by her signature. She was never seen again. Robinson hired 3 more women who would also disappear suspiciously, but he was never a suspect because each one sent letters to their families signed by him. In 1994, Robinson discovered the internet, and a whole new world was opened up to him. Using the name Slave Master, he visited online chat rooms looking for women who enjoyed playing the submissive partner role to hook up with. He portrayed himself as rich, promising to care for them and travel the world. All they had to do was take the plunge and come to him. Several did, and were never seen again. Robinson used the same MO, sending letters back to his victims' families. But by 1999, his name had become a byword in many missing women's cases, and police were now very suspicious of him. In 2000, after a woman reported him for battery, the police had all they needed to get a search warrant for his home. There, they found the corpses of 5 women. In 2022, Robinson was convicted of 3 and admitted to 5 others. Many are convinced there are a lot more out there. Today, John Edward Robinson, aka the Slave Master, is known as the first known serial killer to use the internet to lure his victims. He is on death row to this day. Redditor documents their dive into insanity. In August 2015, a user named Is There Life After Lyme appeared on Reddit and made her very first post titled, "Lyme disease has ruined my life and made me sick." Bites from deer ticks cause Lyme disease, and it can lead to neurological issues if left untreated. The first post revealed that she had been suffering from the disease for many years before getting diagnosed. But 1 year into treatment, she wasn't getting any better. Apart from having a hard time keeping up with her bills because her treatment was so expensive, she was also a single mother to a 5-year-old daughter. A daughter that the user believed was showing symptoms of Lyme disease as well. And that wasn't bad enough. She also felt that her doctor was not giving her the right drugs for the treatment. When Reddit users were alarmed that her doctor might be scamming her, they also felt that her symptoms weren't consistent with Lyme disease. That's when she admitted that she had tested negatively for the disease, but her doctor insisted that she tested negatively because what she suffered from was congenital Lyme disease. Anyone who disagreed was met with a lot of pushback. In her next post, she wrote about experiencing herpes being treated for Lyme disease. These reactions made her hallucinate, hear voices, and she reported an incident in a grocery store where the voices were screaming at her to buy things and threatening to hurt her if she didn't. Another time, she was seeing people but wasn't sure if they were real. She ended the post by asking if Lyme disease could make a person bipolar or schizophrenic.
Searching. Choose Chrome, the only browser with Google Lens.
Every video production can benefit from the tools to help stabilize and stylize camera movement. These include tripod.
This went on for 3 years. Then, in 2019, her posts took a turn. She started posting bizarre takes on the Pizzagate conspiracy theory and a Lyme disease cover. Then she wrote another post on how her Herxes reactions were getting worse and making her have vivid hallucinations. She also talked about her terrible living conditions. Her next post was in a relationship subreddit. It was later deleted, but from the title, it's not hard to imagine her ex might have found out what was happening to her and taken her daughter. It all went downhill from there. She began making posts in random subreddits that were impossible to understand. Some were even in a completely different language. In her last series of posts, she began repeating, "God has entered into my body repeatedly." This is a quote that YouTuber Scared Theater connected to Bob Hickman. It seems like she was suffering from a mental decline. While some Reddit users felt, "Is there life after Lyme?" made the whole thing up and was trolling, others felt she didn't have Lyme disease and her doctor was flat. They kept reaching out to her to get her help. Eventually, one of them got a response from someone named Diane, who identified herself as the woman's sister. She said that "Is there life after Lyme?" got heard at a hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico. One Reddit user might have gotten close to identifying her, but her account was soon deleted. Apart from a few archives of her Reddit page, most of her posts have been wiped out. So far, no one has been able to find out who she was, leaving many to wonder if she didn't get better or if she made it. Mr. Swirl. In 2007, Interpol launched Operation Nico, a program surfaced on the internet committing despicable acts in society in Southeast Asia, particularly in Thailand and Cambodia. And nicknamed Mr. Swirl was impossible to identify because he had digitally disfigured his face to appear like a swirl. Or so he thought. German computer specialists the case. Using the same filter in the opposite direction, they soon had a photo of their man. Interpol posted the picture on their site, and 350 calls later, the man was identified as 32-year-old Christopher Paul Neal, Canadian school teacher in South Korea. One of them got entered into my body repeatedly. This is a quote that YouTuber Scared Theater connected to Bob Hickman. It seems like she was suffering from a mental decline. While some Reddit users felt, "Is there life after for Lyme disease?" These reactions made her hallucinate, hear and be scamming her. They also felt psychological issues if left on the internet to lure routine. A user named "Is There Life After Lyme" appeared on Reddit and made her very first post titled, "Lyme disease has ruined my life and made me sick." Bites from deer ticks cause Lyme disease, and it can lead to neurological issues if left untreated. The first post revealed that she had been suffering from the disease for many years before getting diagnosed. But 1 year into treatment, she wasn't getting any better. Apart from having a hard time keeping up with her bills because her treatment was so expensive, she was also a single mother to a 5-year-old daughter. A daughter that the user believed was showing symptoms of Lyme disease as well. If that wasn't bad enough, she also felt that her doctor was not giving her the right drugs for her treatment. When Reddit users were alarmed that her doctor might be scamming her, they also felt that her symptoms weren't consistent with Lyme disease. That's when she admitted that she had tested negatively for the disease, but her doctor insisted that she tested negatively because what she suffered from was congenital Lyme disease. Anyone who disagreed was met with a lot of pushback. In her next post, she wrote about experiencing Herxes reactions from her treatment, which is common in patients being treated for Lyme disease. These reactions made her hallucinate, hear voices, and even have psychotic episodes. She reported an incident in a grocery store where the voices were screaming at her to buy things and threatening to hurt her if she didn't. Another time, she was seeing people but wasn't sure if they were real. She ended the post by asking if Lyme disease could make a person bipolar or schizophrenic. This went on for 3 years. Then, in 2019, her posts took a turn. She started posting bizarre takes on the Pizzagate conspiracy theory with a Lyme disease cover. Then she wrote another post on how her Herxes reactions were getting worse, making her have vivid hallucinations. She also talked about her terrible living conditions. The next post was a relationship supplement. It was later deleted, but from the title it's not hard to imagine her ex might have found out what was happening to her and taken his daughter. It all went downhill from there. She began making posts in random subreddits that were impossible to understand. Some were even in a completely different language. In her last series of posts, she began repeating, "God has entered into my body," repeatedly. This is a quote that YouTuber Scare Theater connected to Bobby. It seems like she was suffering from a mental illness. While some Reddit users felt, "Is there life after Lyme?" made the whole thing up and was trolling, others felt she didn't have Lyme disease and her doctor was quack. They kept reaching out to her to get her help. Eventually, one of them got a response from someone named Diane, who identified herself as the woman's sister. She said that "Is There Life After Lyme" got hurt and was at a hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico. One Reddit user might have gotten close to identifying her, but her account was soon deleted. Apart from a few archives of her Reddit page, most of her posts have been wiped off the internet. So far, no one has been able to find out who she was, leaving many to wonder if she ever did get better, or if it was all made up. Mr. Swirl. In 2007, Interpol launched Operation Vico after 200 photographs surfaced on the internet showing a man committing despicable acts to the most vulnerable people in society in Southeast Asia, particularly in Thailand and Cambodia. The man, nicknamed Mr. Swirl, was impossible to identify because he had digitally disfigured his face to appear like a swirl, or so he thought. The German computer specialist who wrote the case, using the same filter in the opposite direction they soon had before the game. Interpol posted the picture on their site, and 350 calls later, the man was identified as 32-year-old Canadian school teacher in South Africa. Neil originally wanted to be a priest, but didn't make the cut, so he became the next best thing, teacher. Interpol issued a red notice for his arrest and local law enforcement agencies in Thailand and Cambodia. Bring him in. Neil could not be found. They'd flown him. His last sighting was at Bangkok International Airport. That's when Interpol did something they had never done before. They made a worldwide appeal for help finding him and released his picture. 2 days later, Neil was arrested. The English teacher at a school in the South. He served 10 years in jail in both Thailand and Canada for his heinous crimes against minors. In 2017, he was released under rigorous conditions where he couldn't even breathe next to anyone under the age of 16 or access an electric chair. Neil originally wanted to be a priest, but didn't make the cut, so he became the next best thing, teacher. Interpol issued a red notice for his arrest. Local law enforcement agencies in Thailand and Cambodia were to bring him in. Neil could not be found. He had flown the coop. His last sighting was in Bangkok International Airport. That's when Interpol did something they had never done before. They made a worldwide appeal for help finding him and released his picture. 2 days later, Neil was arrested in Thailand. The time, he was an English teacher at a school in South Korea. He served 10 years in jail in both Thailand and Canada for his heinous crimes against minors. In 2017, he was released under rigorous conditions where he couldn't even breathe next to anyone under the age of 16 or access an electronic device.
At Universal Technical Institute, you can learn skills needed for a fulfilling, hands-on career that you can be passionate about.
The education that you've done.
This happened a few winters ago. I had just finalized my divorce about 6 months earlier, and to put it lightly, I needed a reset. Christina, my girlfriend at the time, suggested we take a trip somewhere quiet, something different from the chaos I've been dealing with. We found a rental on the lake in upstate New York, and I booked it for a week without much thought. The place was exactly what I was looking for. A modern but cozy house positioned right on the lake, surrounded by woods, with only a handful of other properties scattered along the shoreline. Most of them were empty. It wasn't exactly peak season for lakefront living. I welcomed that, though. I really just wanted to be as far from civilization as possible. The host wasn't going to be there. This happened a few winters ago. I had just finalized my divorce about 6 months earlier, and to put it lightly, I needed a reset. Christina, my girlfriend at the time, suggested we take a trip somewhere quiet, something different from the chaos I've been dealing with. We found a rental on a lake in upstate New York, and I booked it for a week without much thought. The place was exactly what I was looking for. A modern but cozy house positioned right on the lake, surrounded by woods, with only a handful of other properties scattered along the shoreline. Most of them were empty. It wasn't exactly peak season for lakefront living. I welcomed that, though. I really just wanted to be as far from civilization as possible. The host wasn't going to be there, but he gave us some detailed instructions on where to find the keys, stuff about the house, and all the standard Airbnb stuff. We arrived in Brooklyn. We got there. There was a small package sitting on the front steps, waiting for us. There was no return address. A little handwritten note that said, "Enjoy your stay. Make sure to stay warm." That part was kind of cute. There was something else in the package. A tiny box of matches. We figured it was some kind of welding gift. A weird one, but harmless enough. Christina laughed and made a joke about how the upstate had always been a little hot. That was that. The next 2 days were exactly what we wanted. Long hikes through the snow, hot drinks by the fireplace, total peace and quiet. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that the snow had been steadily falling since we arrived. Not quite a blizzard, because there wasn't that much wind or fog. There was enough snow to make the landscape feel untouched. It was perfect. I think it's a good time to describe the layout of the house. At least some. The master bedroom, we slept, was on the second floor. It had these massive windows across on the bed that looked at the lake. The roof, at least the windows, must have been pretty thin, so we could hear the patter of snowflakes from inside, which was a really nice touch. There was also a skylight in there, so we could fall asleep to the beautiful sky and snow. Sometime after midnight on the third night, we woke up to a sound. It was barely audible, the sound of the wind and snow. The first thing I noticed was actually the storm. The snowfall had gotten considerably heavier since I had fallen asleep, and the outdoors was starting to resemble more of a blizzard. I shifted my focus back to the sound and realized why it stuck out. It sounded man-made, almost mechanical, unlike the natural sounds you'd expect to hear out in the wilderness. I quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake up Christina, and I made my way across the room. I looked out the window and saw the last thing I expected to see. The snowmobile. It was moving slowly rapidly across the ice. You know it's not the most abnormal thing. People drive snowmobiles on frozen lakes all the time. I was just so confused it was related to this. Like I said, the snow was falling more heavily, so visibility wasn't great, but I could still make out the shape. The driver was moving pace, and I just stopped entirely. I watched as the person behind both started waving their hands like they were in distress. They were shouting. They couldn't make out what they were saying. To my horror, they know we were there. It was impossible. Either Either way, talking about. One of their houses is on a relatively large but overall pretty secluded lake. The lake itself isn't so big that you can't see that. I'll get right to the point. My middle son is a senior in college. He's a good kid, most of the time. I'm a bit cross with him right now, because he just asked me for money for a spring break trip to Hawaii with his friends, which kind of caught me off guard. Like I said, he's a good kid, and I want him to enjoy himself, but something about the way he asked rubbed me the wrong way. His mother's been struggling with her mental health lately, and it would have meant a lot to her to have him around. But I guess he's more preoccupied with getting wasted on a beach with his frat brothers. I can't even say I blame him for it. I was exactly the same when I was his age, and I see a lot of myself in that kid. The whole thing actually got me reminiscing about my own college days and reminded me about something I haven't thought about in a very long time, which is the story I'm about to tell. Funnily enough, my son is the one who introduced me to this page, so maybe he'll get a kick out of this if it gets read. I went to Wharton, class of '85, something I'm still damn proud of. It was and still is the most prestigious business school in the world, and I took that reputation seriously. I had my fun, but I also worked like hell. It was a different time back then. A lot of my classmates were crazy, like Wolf of Wall Street crazy, and I did my best to avoid getting swept up into that life. My junior year, though, I did something a little impulsive. I was dating a Puerto Rican girl named Maria Munez, who I remember fondly. Sometimes I try to imagine how different my life would have been if I had chosen to take things further with various girlfriends I had, her being one of them. Instead of going home for spring break like I usually did, Maria convinced me to come home to Puerto Rico to meet her extended family. It was my first time on the island, and I was eager to impress her, so I agreed without hesitation. That being said, I was a nervous wreck. I didn't want to mess anything up, and Maria often joked about how open Puerto Rican families were, so I was aware that they already knew a lot about me. It turned out that my anxiety was mostly unjustified, as I got along really well with everyone upon meeting them, and it seemed like they really liked me. Most of the trip was about meeting her relatives, but we did have time for a few outings of our own. I mean, it was spring break after all. One of those outings was a hike through El Janquet, which, fun fact, is the only tropical rainforest in the U.S. National Forest System. Neither of us had a car, obviously, so Maria's mother drove us and dropped us off at one of the most popular trailheads. The two of us were pretty devious, so we definitely took advantage of the fact that neither of us had to drive. The plan was to hike, enjoy the scenery, and sneak a little rum we'd packed. Everything was lining up to be perfect, but we quickly realized there was a big problem. The trail we were most excited about was closed. I don't remember why. Flooding, maintenance, something like that. But all I remember was that Maria was really upset. I tried to calm her down and told her we could just hike one of the many other trails the forest had to offer. She wasn't budging, though, and told me that the trail we planned on hiking was like the premier trail, and the other ones didn't even come close. How one hiking trail could be astronomically better than the other, I really couldn't tell you.